So if you're good to go, we're good to go.
Okay.
All
I'm
right.
good to go.
So we'll be small but mighty. All right. So a couple of the things that we want to accomplish today with you, we want to tie up a few loose ends on multiple intelligences that we didn't get around to last time. But it's okay in that this activity that we're going to do segues really nicely into the rest of the agenda because we're going to hook it to the time that we spend with a colleague of ours from the Community Shelter Board that deals with homelessness. And we're going to play for you a portion of her visit with our class over the summer, which was really informative and people really found helpful. And we're using that not to try to sell anybody on working with the issue of homelessness, but to give you some additional reinforcement regarding how very helpful it is to have a community resource person that you're connected with for whatever project you may choose. So those of you that are doing something community oriented, I think will take something good away from that. And then we mentioned the last time and got some affirmation from you all that sometimes people struggle a little bit with the driving question. And so we wanted to try to make that simpler and clearer for you and give you a little bit of help with that. And so we will try to do that as well. And that'll be as far as we can get. And it won't be necessary, obviously, to do breakout rooms because we is one right here. That'll work. This will work just fine. What I want you to do first, before we share a music video with you, if you look at the materials from today, the lyrics from a song by Stephen Sondheim are reprinted on the page. And I'd like you to take a moment and read the lyrics. And if you would, underline one or two of your favorite phrases in the lyrics. What resonates with you when you read the lyrics? Okay, if you had a chance to go through that. So Michelle, what did you pick out there?
I picked out a couple things. Demons are prowling everywhere nowadays.
Okay.
Charm you with a smile for a while. Do you want to know why?
Yes, I do.
I just heard about the shooting over by Middlesex, which is like 2 streets away from me.
Oh, I didn't
So
hear that.
I know that the house was
yeah,
shot at. Was anybody injured?
not that I know of,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I just heard about that. So that was, I guess, last night around 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it
And
related at all to when the health person the house was shot at?
they are not sure if there's a connection between the two.
They're
So
looking.
as I'm reading these lyrics, since I just heard about it, I'm like, okay, demons are prowling everywhere nowadays.
Okay.
Shooting a second one in Upper Arlington.
Yeah, it's scary and surprising. Jody, what did you pick out?
That's funny. I picked out that same demons are prowling everywhere nowadays. That, and then I did on this, I liked the repeat of nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around.
Okay. Laura, how about you?
I underlined being close and being clever ain't like being true.
Okay. All right. Now, what we just asked you to do was to look at something strictly from a verbal linguistic standpoint without seeing anything else or hearing any other stimuli. When you see the music video, this will be accompanied by pictures, so we'll be into visual spatial. You'll hear the melody, and so the music will be introduced. And so what you get from this may be greatly enhanced. Okay, now, why this song? Why did we pick this? We were imagining what if we, can you leave the faces a bit longer? Okay. We were imagining what if we were going to, as the first phase of introducing a group of kids to possibilities for service learning, what if we were going to ask them about organizations and agencies that they're aware of that take care of people, that protect people, that won't let harm come to them. And so when you look at the prompts that begin on pages 4 and 5, what we had tried to do was develop reflection prompts that went with every intelligence. Now, honestly, if I were doing this activity with a group, I wouldn't have people respond to all these, but I might give people choices how they wanted to reflect on this piece. For today, we just want you to think about two things while you watch this. One, from a personal standpoint, when you see this, who do you think about that you know well, that is in your actual life? Who does this make you think about? And then the second thing is, what organizations or agencies does it make you think about that are in the business of taking care of folks? Okay. All right. So we will let this roll and then we'll talk a little bit more.
And now this one is for my son, Jason, who's here tonight too, and last night. And I know he's old enough to take care of himself, but it's always nice to have someone looking out for you no matter how old you are, right? Nothing's gonna harm you, not while I'm around. Nothing's gonna harm you, no sir, not while I'm around. Demons are prowling everywhere nowadays. I'll send them howling, I don't care, I've got ways. No one's gonna hurt you, no one's gonna dare. Others can desert you, not to worry, whistle, I'll be there. Demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you, not while I'm around. Being close and being clairvoyant, like being true. I don't need to, I would never hide a thing from you. Like some, no one's gonna hurt you, no one's gonna dare. Others can desert you, not to worry, whistle, I'll be there. Our demons will charm you with a smile for a while, but in time, nothing can harm you. Not while
Do you have any different reactions to what struck you when the music, the lyrics, and the visuals were all put together? How did that affect you?
I didn't realize it was like a mother singing to her son.
I didn't either.
In the play that it's taken from, in the Broadway show, it's not. But this is the way that Barbara Streisand wanted to use it for her son and in the concert context. So, you know, when you think about it, it could apply to lots of relationships. And in fact, it makes me think about teachers a lot because I think we have such a responsibility to the kids in our care that we're looking out for them. And in many cases, especially for kids who come from families that aren't that strong, we're those people. So it can describe lots of connections. Anybody have any other impressions about it? Okay, what?
Before you go though, think about too, we talk a lot about entry events and how important entry events are to get you emotionally engaged in an issue. And I wonder if when you read the words, if kids read this as a song or as a poem and just had only the written words on the piece of paper, were you more emotionally engaged when you saw the music video and heard her sing it? And there are, it's the same amount of time, but it's just, again, just that tweak that we can, in such a short period of time, change people's emotions about things.
Well, the other thing too, I noticed like when I was reading it, there were a couple places where I reread because I thought I must not be reading it right or pausing in the right way. And so then to hear her do it, like I kept getting thrown off by that word whistle, like whistle and I'll be there.
Uh-huh.
Like I wasn't sure how to read that. So I flipped over so I could see the words when it was coming, just so I could tune in.
Yeah. And when you guys commented on this, and I'm the same way. When I read it, you're so focused on the demons and what's going on. And when you hear her sing it, and especially with the video playing, it's like this caretaker. It's the caretaking is bigger than the demons are. So it does change the meaning a little bit as well.
Did that, when you think about organizations or agencies that you're familiar with that take care of people with certain sorts of needs, did any of those organizations pop into your head?
I just kept thinking I have a family that is trying to figure out like guardianship and things like that. And I just kept thinking, having to deal with a guardian ad litem and, just these families going through divorces and when they're not as amicable as you'd like them to be for the child.
Mhm.
That's kind of what pops in, only because that's currently something that I've been dealing with this year with one of my kids. And
Sure.
having kids for 2 years, it feels like a big impact.
Mhm.
Well, and thinking about what kids in the foster care system go through, going from place to place to place and wondering who's looking out for them and who's protecting them. Anybody else have an issue or an agency that came to mind? Well, we will make a connection for you here because we're going to introduce you to Sarah Loken from the Community Shelter Board. And there was curiosity in our summer group about what is happening to the homeless population in Columbus by way of the pandemic. How is the pandemic causing further complications for what they experience? And so we invited Sarah to come into one of our sessions and talk about that a bit and raise awareness for us and then take some questions. And so we're going to share with you the first part of that where she's actually presenting information. But I'd like you to think about her and her colleagues with the various agencies that serve the homeless and how their work relates to looking out for people who are in a very desperate situation.
Reason that we were able to. Morning, everyone.
Morning.
I'm going to share my screen with you. And then I'm going to ask if you can see my opening slide and if you can see my face still. Yeah, we're good? Okay, sweet. Well, good morning, everyone. And thanks, Kathy and Ellen, for inviting me. I really enjoy any and every opportunity that I get to interact with this work and the organization. I really value it, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about why. But I'm also going to just introduce you to myself, to Community Shelter Board, to the mission, and kind of give you an update on the state of homelessness. And I'm excited for the opportunity to do that. My name is Sarah Loken. I have spent my entire career in the homeless services sector. I have children in Pickerington schools, and I'm a student of service learning myself. So this all comes together really nicely for me. I am with Community Shelter Board, and if you haven't heard of this organization before, it's our job to lead the coordination and the collective community effort to make sure that everyone in Columbus and Franklin County has a place to call home. So we oversee all the shelters, prevention programs, street outreach, and housing programs in the homeless system. We are responsible for doing all the strategic planning around those services, budgeting, data collection and analysis, and more. We manage the lease up of some specialized housing for people who have experienced homelessness. And we are the conduit for all public funding for homelessness at the local, state, and federal levels. So you'll see on this slide, if you haven't heard of Community Shelter Board, you have probably heard of Volunteers of America or Faith Mission or Huckleberry House. So we have 17 partners across the community who actually deliver the services, kind of boots on the ground in the field. And we all work really, really closely together. And this collective network of agencies served 15,000 people last year that had an experience with homelessness. And that's just in Columbus and Franklin County. In Columbus, we really are living in a growing community, a fast growing community. So leaders here are projecting an additional 1 million people are going to populate the 7-county region of Central Ohio by the year 2050. Just in Franklin County alone, where probably most of us live, we're projected to grow by nearly 400,000 people by the year 2050. So as the population grows, so does the number of people who experience homelessness. 1,700 more people have become homeless since 2010, and the majority of that increase in homelessness is just because of population growth alone. The trouble with population growth is that in our community, there's not enough housing for everyone, and rents are rising in Columbus faster than the national average. That brings me to really wanting to point out some of the common misperceptions about who is homeless and how that happens to somebody. You may think of homelessness and think of someone that you have encountered panhandling on the street. And that's certainly legit. But in our community, the majority of people who are experiencing homelessness and showing up at a homeless shelter are actually families with children. You don't see them necessarily panhandling on the street, but that's the majority of who is homeless. And I encounter in my work a lot of misperceptions about how homelessness would happen to someone. There certainly are stories of people who have experienced drug addiction or had a really serious kind of health problem or mental health challenge that kept them from working and being able to take care of themselves. But most often, I'm encountering in the shelters people who are working full time, but are making minimum wage and actually can't afford the typical apartment in Columbus. So, you know, it's not always what you might expect. And I think that's a really important thing to understand. You know, the kind of housing that we need for, unless we're going to address in our community the minimum wage issue, we need more affordable housing, which is just housing that can be afforded based on the current wages in any given area. In Columbus and Franklin County, it's been quantified that we have a shortage of about 54,000 places for people to live who need that affordable housing. That's a giant gap. In the meantime, it's more and more difficult for poor people to find housing, as I said, because in our community, average rents have increased 38% over 5 years, which is really dramatic. There's research that shows that an increase in rent is associated with an increase in homelessness. That's based on some national research. And then in our community, we also have an eviction problem. We've got higher eviction rates than we should in Columbus. And an eviction really creates a major problem for a family or an individual because it places kind of a stain on that record. And a little known fact that really surprised me is that even having an eviction filed against you for, let's say, non-payment of rent or late payment of rent, if something really terrible happened, like a global pandemic, having an eviction filed, even if you manage to scrape together that money and repair the relationship with the landlord and avoid that eviction, that filing is on your credit report for perhaps ever. And you know, an apartment community or a property manager who you are filling out an application with 10 years later to try to move, that rental property manager is looking at your credit report and is not savvy enough to be able to tell the difference. And neither am I, but that was an eviction filing and not an actual eviction set out. And so people who've even had evictions filed against them are being turned away and closed out of housing options when they go into the rental market. That's a major problem. I also want to talk just a little bit about what has happened with the global pandemic with regard to homelessness, because this has not been obvious to everyone that I speak with. You know, we've all, especially you all, have experienced major implications in the way you do your work as a result of the economy being shut down and during a stay-at-home order, something so dramatic that has never happened before in our lifetimes. And I think it's been a common experience to kind of check in with each other and say, how has this affected your work? And I've thought a lot about your work. You may have not thought much about my work, or somehow some other social service industries have been affected. But in the homeless system, you know, on a good day, we are working to prevent homelessness whenever we can. And if homelessness does happen, we work to respond really quickly and respond with programs that help people get back into housing as fast as possible. So it's all we do. We prevent. If it does end up happening, we respond with housing as quickly as we can. No matter the program, no matter the clinical setting, no matter the situation, we're focused on prevention and then a really quick response focused on housing. So with COVID, we are taking the same approach. We're working really hard to prevent the spread of illness wherever possible among people who are homeless. And if someone who is homeless does get sick, we have to respond really quickly with isolation and quarantine. I want to show you these images of what shelters look like. If you haven't been in one before, they are extremely crowded congregate settings by design, because of course that's the most efficient thing to do. But when you think about a stay home order and where you have been since March, imagine being here and this man coughing on you while you lay in the bed next to him. This has presented a significant challenge for us and has frankly been quite scary. This is another dorm where you see folks are bunked up. There are two people in these whoops, 2 people in these bunk beds right here, and they're in a dormitory that looks like this. Those beds are really, really close together. This is a dining area. This is how close people are together eating their meals. This is a men's shelter, and here's a family shelter. Again, where, you know, we've got congregate settings and people sitting very close to one another to eat their meals. So this is a breeding ground for illness. You know, this looks probably like your school's cafeteria, which was shut down immediately, right? Because this is not safe for kids to be this close together during rampant illness. We can't shut down homeless shelters. If we did, there would be roughly 1,200, 1,300 people on the streets without access to places to wash their hands or sleep or have access to food. And frankly, all the soup kitchens and feeding sites did shut down. All of the libraries did shut down. All of the rec centers where someone could normally go to use the restroom and wash their hands shut down. The only thing that stayed open was homeless shelters. And the reason that we were able to do that without having rampant spread of illness was that we expanded, and we had to act really quickly to figure out how to achieve CDC recommended social distancing in our homeless shelters. And it was only possible to do that by taking over some other facilities. So what you're looking at here is the gymnasium at the historic YMCA downtown building at 40 West Long Street. And these mats, although they do not look terribly comfy, are 6 feet apart. And so this is a safer environment in which people who have no better option and have no home to stay home in, a safer place for them to be with definitely stepped up cleaning and things happening in the space to keep it safe. This is Sullivan Gardens Rec Center, which was closed because of the pandemic. And we worked with City Parks and Rec to take this over and again, set up accommodations for roughly 100 more people to have a safe place to be socially distanced while they are homeless. We set up between these multiple facilities, I'm just showing you 2 of them, we set up 250 beds outside of our normal shelters to achieve social distancing. And this allowed us in some of those other crowded shelters that I showed you to spread those beds apart, to unbunk the bunk beds and really have safe accommodations in all of our facilities. The other thing that was really important that we had to do was when someone does become ill, they can't stay in any of these facilities, even if the beds are 6 feet apart. We had to find a way, a safe way to provide isolation and quarantine for people who were sick or exposed to the illness. And so we achieved that through the use of a motel, which is open right now. And we currently have 5 patients being treated in a medical setting of a motel, which was a completely new effort for us. We don't have medical facilities, but this was an expertise that we had to acquire really, really quickly. And you know, it's interesting, during a stay-home order, you can't actually stay home if you don't have a home. And these facilities for isolation and quarantine were really, really important because they are for people who are not sick enough to be in the hospital, but they have tested positive or they have been exposed. If they had a home, they would be home resting on the couch and eating soup and kind of taking it easy for a couple of weeks while they get better. They don't have a home. And so we had to find a place to put them where they're not going to infect other people, but they are able to recuperate and return to health and then get back to the business of finding a place to live. So right now we have 91 motel rooms for isolation and quarantine. I want to say so far our peak has been having about 30 of those motel rooms in use on any given time. And right now we've got 5, as I mentioned, five patients, one of which is a family in isolation and quarantine. Going forward, you know, this is a marathon and not a sprint. It's not going to be over anytime soon. We're trying to do the kind of planning that you are doing right now to figure out what this new world looks like, and you know, how you're going to teach in this new environment. We're figuring out how much worse is it going to get, and how do we need to be ready to respond to perhaps more incidences of homelessness, with rising unemployment rates, with a backlog of evictions that are going to be filed and actually processed. And the Los Angeles Times is predicting that as we see unemployment rise as a result of the pandemic, we should expect a significant increase in numbers of homelessness across the US. So we're doing a lot of planning to try to ready our system for that, focused on not building more shelters to respond to that need, but focusing on stepping up our prevention efforts and making sure that we're really well prepared to rapidly rehouse people who do become homeless as fast as possible. And we're actually looking at purchasing a motel so that we own it and don't have to deal with like a long-term lease. Because especially as the economy reopens and as motels reopen, it's harder and harder to find places to do safe isolation and quarantine. So this is expected to go on long enough that we're actually thinking about purchasing our own motel, and ideally, when the pandemic ends, converting it into some sort of housing for the people we serve.
Andrea, good to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm a little late.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, now to take us back to why we introduced this, you may remember that early on we said in really effective service learning initiatives, we're aiming for kids to become both experts and change makers. And it's wonderful to engage them in contributing to the greater good. But we want them to be informed about whatever they're taking action about. And so when we introduced this guest speaker to our summer group, as a group of adult learners, it was our way of saying, if you were going to go forth with some type of effort to raise awareness about homelessness or engage in some kind of helpful action, it would be really important to fully understand what's happening. And so the benefit of having a strong resource person who's also a good communicator is really something that we wanted to stress. You remember when you first watched the video of Pam Bergen's kids studying Alzheimer's, that the use of their resource person from the Alzheimer's Association was really important. And obviously, the work that he did with first graders was done at a really different level than this work that we asked Sarah to do with our adult group. But it's an important element in helping the learners, whoever they are, whether they're adults or kids, become better informed. So here's my question. What is something that you heard Sarah present that was surprising to you or useful to you? What do you realize that you might not have known without her remarks?
I was surprised that most of the homeless families, they have either a mom or a dad who works full time, but that they are earning minimum wage and they can't afford rent or housing. That really surprised me.
And yes, the math on that, which will kind of make the case even stronger, in Central Ohio, for a family to be able to afford a very basic 2-bedroom apartment, a very basic two-bedroom rental, the income that they're pulling into the household needs to be at least 2.5 times the minimum wage working full time. So that means even if you have 2 adults working, you're still not there. And for a hardworking single parent, of course, you can imagine the gap. So that accounts for one of the reasons why for some people, and we're not going to get into politics here, but when you hear that people campaigning strongly to increase the minimum wage. This is part of the reason why, because across the country, the gap between income levels for hardworking people and the availability of housing is a really severe thing.
And one of the things, when we think about education long term and what our goals are with kids, what the Community Shelter Board spends a lot of time on mitigation. They're homeless now. Now, what do we do? Our Community Shelter Board is really a leader, though, in the country, and their goal is to end homelessness. It is not, we're going to buy more motels or we're going to have more shelters of some kind. And so as your kids become aware of these issues, what we hope we're doing is educating them to how can you solve this problem? Because clearly when you hear Sarah talk, the problem is not that people are too lazy to work, which is what a stereotypical vision of it. And so we need kids to be educated to be problem solvers. Think about the money that we spend as a community when people are homeless, in trying to just mitigate that versus allowing people who want to work to be able to have. And again, I don't want to be political. I'm not saying what the solution is, but the solution isn't just build more motels. And so, one of our goals should be to educate kids to understand issues well enough that they can be the problem solvers someday.
Mm-hmm. If we had a group of kids investigating what are the causes of homelessness, they would discover on their own that one of the major causes is the lack of affordable housing. And then you begin to ask questions about, okay, what can we do about that as a society?
And maybe one of their role models or a person that comes in to speak, they see all the time people who are building, $300,000 homes, $500,000 homes, $1 million homes. But there are also people who are developers who focus on affordable housing versus building the $1 million house. And if they never get to meet those people, if they never get to read about those people, then they don't have that. That's not in their toolbox to even think about, well, maybe I want to do that.
What else did you pick up on in her remarks that was interesting or surprising to you?
I didn't really stop to ever think about quarantining the
Mhm.
whole population. So when she said, they had this motel where they were quarantining, it just never dawned on me that they would need quarantine.
Yeah.
But when you see where they're, staying in the shelters, of course, because those are so crowded. So I never stopped to think how that could be an issue to quarantine that population.
Well, and if we had Sarah here today, one of the things they're working on now is how to get them vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else that you found surprising or interesting to you? Okay, now
before you move on from that, I want to just say one thing is a lot of times you'll hear people talk about service learning, that the ideas have to come from kids. But oftentimes kids haven't had enough experience to know that they're interested in this topic or whatever topic it is. And so one of the things in working with community agency, Sarah's wonderful because we've worked with her for a number of years and she gets what schools can do. But if you work with a community agency person, they come to you as an expert on what their issues are and their needs are, but you're the expert on how kids, your classes can help meet those needs. Because especially when we first started working with community agencies, they would say, well, we need money. But the things that your kids can do as writers, communicators, photographers, artists. Your art students can tell a story that meets the need of the community shelter board. And the agency won't always know what your kids are capable of.
We want to play for you before we go on and talk some about driving questions. We want to play for you a little clip from a project that was done several years ago at Barrington. That year they were
Wasn't Barrington.
Windermere.
Yeah, it's either
What-
Windermere
I'm
or
sorry.
Lakesview.
All right.
Or
They
else I've got the wrong clip.
Okay. They were able to take a group of kids to briefly visit the YWCA Family Center. And it's hard to do that now. They're not as open to visitations for reasons that you can certainly understand. But we want to show you one of the fifth graders reflecting after the experience. It for us speaks to the importance of reflection in the first place, but it also will help you see that kids can discern new insights when they are given new experiences and opportunities to see what's going on.
My class took a field trip to a homeless shelter, and I felt like different when I went there. I felt I would always remember the smiles on everyone's faces because they seemed happy but sad at the same time, almost as though they were hurt inside.
Now, that is 12 seconds just about. But what does her reaction say to you? What do you get from that?
I'm going to take your mute buttons off. Pretend we're in the same room together and we're making eye contact with you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that she was very insightful, to say they were happy and sad, and they had smiles on their faces, but she knew in their hearts that was very insightful for, I don't know what grade she was in, but
Fifth grade.
grade.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that if she hadn't actually visited the facility, she would not have learned that. It kind of goes back to the lyrics. You had us read first and then watch the video, and then you see the whole picture
Yeah.
of what it could be.
Mhm. Mhm.
Laura, you looked like you had something to say.
Oh, well, I know her. That's Maddie. I had her at Hastings. She works at the Aveda salon on Lane Avenue now.
Oh, does she? I always wondered how old she would be, where she would be now.
Yeah, I would imagine she's in her early 20s,
Uh-huh.
late teens. Yeah, she's a great kid. And I think that she seemed to me that she didn't know she would have made that big of a difference in an adult's life or somebody that was struggling like that. And so I think it warmed her heart to see that she could impact someone even at her young age.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And she was clearly wanting to be in touch on an emotional level with somebody else's experience. So, we talk a lot about empathy, but empathy requires being moved to that point emotionally by the right kinds of information and stimuli. I think you have to have that experience.
And empathy, I think we both agree, empathy isn't something that you teach somebody. You give them an experience in which they feel it. They experience
It's
it.
revealed.
It's revealed. And So I think, Michelle, what you said about if she hadn't gone there or had that experience, that was an emotional connection to it. And, it doesn't have to be homelessness or poverty or, some heart wrenching thing. I think we showed you guys Kim Wilson's Iditarod video. Did we show you
No,
that?
no, I haven't seen that.
Oh, we'll have to do that sometime. But the kids, the high school kids with multiple disabilities and the first graders didn't know before they started that project that they cared about the Iditarod. And when Kim was done with them, they all cared about the Iditarod, and we did too. So it's whether you take them someplace or you figure out some other emotional way to connect them emotional is so important.
And going back, that's part of why entry events are so important at the start of your topic, because we can't always physically take kids places. That it doesn't always work out with that kind of direct physical contact. But we're always looking for as much representation of that reality as we can find to connect on an emotional level. Michelle, I so appreciate you suggesting that there was some connection between the opening poem, the song, Sarah Loken, and this kid, because that's really what we were trying for. So thank you. We appreciate that. All right, now.
You did.
Yes. Okay, so Kathy is going to make that connection also to this little film she has prepared for us to make it easier to talk about driving questions, because the sample driving question she's going to use in the video also appears on your agenda, but it also links to this topic. And then we'll talk about, okay, how do you take that example, that format, and transfer that to your own topic? So here we go.
So I apologize up front that I did this very quickly right before we were meeting with you. So I will go back and adjust a few things, but you'll get the idea. There it is.
So that was the driving question when some high school kids worked on a video for a community shelter board. So the idea was for them first to understand more about the work of the shelter board and more about the issue of homelessness, and then help to craft a message that would be of use to the agency and use their skills in order to make that happen. Okay, so one of the things we believe about driving questions is that everybody makes it too hard to as a process. Everybody frets about the perfect wording, and we want to discourage you from having anxiety about this. We just want you to, take your best shot at what is it that you want kids to learn about. So what's the expert piece of that? What is worth investigating, that they'll be curious about, that they'll consider an important topic? And that's the inquiry question. And then what are they going to do about whatever they're investigating. What action will they take? What will they create or produce? And you remember when you looked at the restaurant project last week, that wasn't necessarily service learning. That was really good PBL. And in that one, it might have been what are the pieces of a good business plan, and using our technology and our writing skills and our sales skills, how can we create a great business plan for our own new restaurant? I mean, that would have been how that fit together for that project. So at this point, here is what we would like you all to share. What project idea are you playing around with? And I know that a few of you have, at least may have taken a shot at what your driving question might look like. And if you're willing to share your rough draft of that, that would be great for everybody to listen to. But first, let's just start with what topic or idea are you contemplating presently? Michelle, I'll pick on you because I know you know.
I was just trying to pull it up.
Okay.
So hold on just a second. So I'm pulling up the project slide Kathy sent out. Okay. So the title that I have come up with is Appreciating Older Adults in the United States. And do you want me to go into the focus or the essential questions?
I want you to just tell us, what do you hope is going to be the outcome? In what way will your kids be demonstrating knowledge about and appreciation of older adults? And then just specifically, if you played around with the driving question, you can share what the driving question looks like right now.
Yeah, so basically the project is kind of like students doing research on the aging process, because I felt like during COVID, with so many people shut in and students probably not able to see their grandparents, I was concerned about the relationship or the lack of relationship happening between their grandparents and the student and grandparent relationship. So then I had met with Ellen over Zoom because I was really kind of stuck on where to take this project. And so I think it's really important that students are able to see that older adults are still contributing members in the society. And so by studying, and so by studying well-known individuals, like Dr. Fauci, Joe Biden, even past scientists, Benjamin Franklin, Albert Einstein, so that they can see that older adults, are still contributing to the society. And I also wanted them to kind of become experts on the aging process as well, that there is a spectrum for older adults. And then I was thinking students could become experts through reading nonfiction texts, fiction texts as well, picture books. I found some videos and articles on older adults being athletic and athletes, and let them read, annotate, and then create a class picture book where they've taken all of their knowledge, as well as learning empathy through possibly writing letters to older adults through Meals on Wheels. So my husband, he participates in Meals on Wheels each month. So I thought that could be a connection through Life Alliance, through my husband, taking letters, kind of creating a pen pal exchange. And then the students, after writing the class picture book, would share their knowledge to other students, younger students in the building.
Okay. All right.
Michelle, do you plan to, this is going to be a great project, and I think the kids will really be excited about it. Are you going to attempt to show any like differences in different cultures in how they treat?
I had definitely thought about that. I feel like there are so many different avenues that I can take with the project. I did think about cultures, comparing cultures, how I feel like in the United States, the older population, they aren't as valued as maybe the Japanese or the Chinese cultures. So I definitely thought about taking that route as well. I just feel like there are so many different branches.
And you don't have to answer all that on your own. I mean, you're basically creating a plan with, it's okay to have options and let the kids' interests, once you set the stage, let their interest make some of the determination about exactly where you go with it.
And you probably have, if you do go introduce that concept, you probably have all those different cultures within your school, or at least in the district. You know, if the kids created some sort of a survey, or if you were interested in doing this, we've got some connections in outside of El Paso, Texas, and New Mexico. It's almost 100% Hispanic school district, and then the Zuni Pueblo in New Mexico. And I'm telling you, on the Zuni Pueblo, it is good to be old because they're in charge. And it's almost a foreign, I mean, it's in our country, but it's almost a foreign thought in how they run their community.
Michelle, I have a connection with the Asian population here in UA. There's a like kind of like Meal on Wheels, but it's geared towards Asians, where they make like Korean meals or Chinese, like Asian meals, and people who are over like 60, I don't know what the number is, but they pay like, it's like $2, and they come and deliver the meal to their houses. And a lot of them are, and I think they're based in UA. So if you want that
That's
connection.
really interesting.
Yeah, I would love that.
We'd pay
Yeah,
for
so I know a lot of my friends' parents who are Asian, obviously, they go and they participate in that. And like some of my friends, they'll buy a bunch and then they'll help deliver to the older people who can't drive or can't go to them, or X, Y, and Z why they can't. But it's local here since there's a big Asian population here.
That's really interesting.
That is. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it until some of my friends' parents who are a lot older, they participated because they, like Meals on Wheels, they have foods, but it's usually American meals. I mean,
Right.
and not like home cooked meals from their culture and stuff. So it's usually like some kind of soup or like Asian inspired meal, and it's made by Asian people too, like Korean moms, I think. So
Well, gosh, that's a really good connection. So I will encourage the two of you to stay in touch about that. Okay, so Michelle, to kind of wrap up where you are with the development of questions, it sounds like you might want to keep working on a couple of different what questions that kind of lead you toward the sorts of things you want the kids to investigate as experts. And then it was sounding like the action question, will be something like how can we share the most important things we discover with others in our community or in our school or whatever. It sounds like your action is going to be the sharing of information and insights. Is that right?
Yeah, I have developed, if someone else wants to share, then you can come back to me. I'm trying to pull up what I have typed.
We'll come back in a minute. I want to at least get to the tentative topics of the other folks. Andrea, what's your topic tentatively?
So it's still in the works, but you
Okay.
guys helped me a lot. Mine is, since I'm with kindergartners, I want to inspire the love of reading with them, and basically why people read and aspects. And the big overall question is like, um, what makes a great book and why do we gravitate towards certain books? So I want to get like lots of books in the kids' hands, but also look at book reviews and interact with authors and illustrators, and also the older kids, and why they choose certain, or why do we gravitate towards certain books in that way. And then I also wanted to touch a little bit about race and identity with I don't know if you guys seen the graphic of like how many children's books, there's a lot based on animals and like fake characters versus based on different races and stuff. So I wanted them to like look in their own book bins and see like what books do they tend to pick out, and kind of like the mirrors and windows aspect of do these books represent me or not, and that kind of thing.
All of that is great. I want to say in front of everybody here, though, we also talked, and Andrea has a great idea about the action piece of this, that after the kids are becoming more enthusiastic, committed readers, then what are they going to do for others?
So we were talking a lot. It kind of came like an aha moment. A lot of my kids where I'm like, okay, we're done reading. We talked about how do we mark our books and using bookmarks. And then that kind of inspired me of doing like a book review of making bookmarks with a QR code where they can make a video of themselves presenting why they love that book, and how we can put it in our library bookmarks, and have like the media specialists like pass them out, or like when they display books, we can have that little like bookmark sticking out, and then people can bring their iPads and like use the QR code and listen to the kindergartner explain why they love that book.
Will
So
you teach us how
That
to do
is,
that?
I think that's genius. And
It's very genius. And I was going to suggest, and this is so old school, I was going to say, how about the kids, you help them write reviews of their favorite books, and especially the culturally, expanding the culture, which you've just taken to a whole nother level. But think about parents too, who would use that information. If you can put it like on the district website or have a class webpage, because and grandparents, Ellen knows I'm taking too much time. That's the look she gets when I'm taking too much time, but I'm so excited about this. I'm always wanting to buy books for my granddaughter who's in first grade, and I don't know what's a good book or what first graders like. And so if I had a place to go other than, the bookstore, and ask somebody to get that from other first graders or kindergartners, that'd be great.
Well, and we talked about how once that takes off, that they can encourage other classes to do it too. So that it might become a real system within the library. It's a very cool idea.
And that's like the revolution. You can change your own instruction, but as soon as other teachers hear we can do that, they're turning the reading part into real action and a service part by just that skill that you would teach them. That's great.
Laura, what you got?
I'm sticking with my initial idea, and I'm going to team up with Catherine Shapiro at Hastings. We've been brainstorming ways that, just to remind you, the initial idea was to get kids to understand how they can use art to help relieve stress and anxiety. And Catherine has some really great ideas. I wish she was here because I can't remember all of the things she told me. But she's worked actually with illustrators that help to convey that very thing through their illustrations, and that have come and spoken to the whole school. So we've been talking about possibly bringing in a speaker and then branching off from there. So, and then I know in other classes, you all gave me the idea of having the kids, after they explore their own use of using art to help with their stress and anxiety, what they could create to help other students or other people in general.
Fabulous, fabulous.
That's terrific.
Okay, so I mean that is a really good topic to translate easily into a driving question, because that one lays out very cleanly how can people express.
Speaking of Catherine Shapiro, she's here.
Um,
Just in time.
how can the arts be useful in relieving stress, and as artists, how can we help others do that? I mean, the two parts of the driving question will fall into place easily. Jody, what are you thinking?
Hi, Catherine.
Okay, so I do want to kind of stick with the one I was thinking about for my special needs child, and I talked to our IS here just to kind of pick her brains, and so I've kind of adapted it a little bit, switched it up, and I'm thinking of either 2 or 3 parts to this. So thinking of what can we do for Nat herself to get ready for middle school. Like the IS said, one of the hardest things is thinking about like that recess time, which is hard for us here to keep her involved and, interacting and stuff. So maybe like what can we do for Nat? And it might be, I was thinking I could pick Catherine's brain on the Hastings part, because I'm almost positive she's going to Hastings, but I know that final decision hasn't been made. And so I was thinking, my group, last group that went to middle school, they're now 7th graders. And so I have some kids that were in our wolf pack at that time that I'm wondering if maybe they could possibly make some videos, especially now that we're going to be 5 days in, that they could show what what lunch is like. I know it'll be a bit different, but she'd get more of a sense. So like preparing some things for Nat as she goes to that transition. It actually will help the other kids in the class as well. And then I also thought then my kids could prepare things for her teachers, like what she's been doing with us and what works, like some of her behaviors and what we do in response. And so then they could help, she loves to hug and touch. And so, they'll do hands to self, and they have just certain routines and rituals with her that then we can communicate that with staff, and they can even use it with peers for what we have found works well with her here. So I'm still on that direction with Nat, but more so now like a breaking it up into 2, things for Nat herself, and then things for those that will be part of her life in middle school, the teachers and possibly peers.
Well, you couldn't have picked anything that had more of an authentic need
Absolutely.
than
Well,
what you did.
Yeah, and my class, we've spent 2 years, and some of the kids, 2 of my Wolfpack members have been with her. They were in the 2-3 too, and are still very actively engaged. Like today at our Valentine's party, she worked for us game, and she wanted to play that with Jack, and Jack's been a Wolfpack member with her since 2nd grade. So
That sounds great.
Yeah.
One of the things, sorry, can I jump in?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Something for Jody. Jody, you are welcome to pick my brain anytime. Can't guarantee there's anything in there, but anytime, happy to help. And I was going to share with you, we actually had a meeting with our Bears kids on Monday. They came in and put up some decorations in the building for Kindness Week on their day off from school. And they were talking about what videos we were going to need to send to the 5th grade coming over, as well as creating for our current 6th graders, because our current 6th graders
Right.
still haven't seen an actual intramural recess time. They haven't seen, so many things that they would typically already know. So I don't even know if you have to tap into your 7th graders that are here other than the fact that they were Wolfpack members, if any of our 8th grade Bears members were Wolfpack members, they
Yeah.
may be able to do that piece of it for you. If your class could just brainstorm and generate a list of like maybe what kinds of things they want to see. We have tons of kids who are working on videos right now to help with the transition. And then that way it can be shared with all the classes at Wycliffe and all the classes at Greensview and all at Windermere, because she's not going to be the only one who's going to need that for
Right.
sure.
Well, and I only mentioned 7th grade just because that was my last group that went on to middle.
Right.
So I know specific kids that I know would love to do that. And then they may have already be part of your Bears organization, you know? And I
Perfect.
also was thinking because of COVID, I didn't think the 6th graders would have. I mean, I know some kids that were part of Wolfpack, and it doesn't have to be Wolfpack kids. I just know those kids have genuinely shown an interest and in the
I
past
love it.
wanted to.
Jody, what is the wolf pack?
So because we have, you know, quite a few kids with special needs, it started off, so we were trying to do a lot with peer mentors. And so to allow our paras to kind of step back and let the peers play a more active role with those children. And so it started off first, teachers made some recommendations and they would have lunch every now and then. And part of those lunches were for just the Wolfpack members, and they would do activities that would put themselves in other people's shoes and experience certain disabilities and challenges that some of these kids face on a day to day. So these lunches always had some sort of activity. And then they would also meet to try to come up with kind of like an action plan. So like with Nat, you know, when these behaviors, like she has quite a few new behaviors, and I think it's all part of the pandemic. And so when these behaviors, they kind of just get a little training of how to communicate and what to do in these situations and when to step in and when to, you know, so it just was, it started in a way to help them become peer mentors.
Okay, gotcha.
Kind of let peers interact more than the adults stepping in, the paras stepping in.
That's, I mean, you're starting with such a great idea.
Yeah.
A foundation with having those kids have those experiences. And it just shows they're so capable of doing important things.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't let them do important things, then
Well, and for us, what we've noticed too is obviously it increases the social interactions between kids of various abilities, and it builds those relationships. And I mean, it also allows then the child themselves become a bit more independent and not rely on the para as much, because it's really easy for the paras to step in right away, and because you want to help.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
You know, so it's been really positive for us.
Good. Good.
And
Well-
my group grows. I had maybe like 3 last year. This year they went to meet after lunch, and it was like 5 of them left because you know, more and more want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your project ideas are all off to a really solid
Yeah.
start. And here's where we are in the process. This was session 4. At session 6, each of you will a little bit more concretely share the plan through just a simple set of talking points that you'll put on a couple of slides, and you know, we'll take turns. You'll take turns sharing the screen so that we can put your slides up, and everybody looks at some common talking points across the projects. Now, those are listed on today's agenda, and you'll see, you know, we're asking who's working on the project. So most of you are working individually, but like Laura and Catherine are working together. So you'll identify yourselves as the design team. And you'll have a what section with the title and the focus of just what your topic is and what you're naming the project.
You want me to pull it up?
why you're excited about, and then a few things under how with the entry event and your action ideas and a couple of curriculum connections. In your Google Classroom, under assignments, there are some sample slides from this past summer so that you can see how these slides came out for a couple of the projects from last summer. So between now and when we meet again in 2 weeks, just take a look at that format and make sure that you're comfortable with the format. You don't have any questions. And of course, keep working on your template. But what we'd like to know from you, and you can just email us this if you want, if there are some particular things that you want help with during session 5, tell us what those are so that we can structure session 5 to meet the needs that you have as you try to pull things together. Because session 5, it's more wide open, and we'll make that look the way that you would like it to look. Now, we can always fill in with some extra things that we think will be useful to you. But if you all have questions and needs, we want those things to drive what we do when we're together the next time. So we're together in 2 weeks for session 5. That means that there's enough time between now and then. If anybody else wants individual help, tell us and we'll Zoom with you. And then session 6, we'll pull everything together with folks sharing their slides and their highlights. What can we answer for you to be helpful before we close?
We just send you an email if we would like to do a private Zoom, like a
Yeah.
special. Okay.
Yeah,
And give us
some times to pick from, you know,
Okay.
and we'll let you know what works, and we'll set that up.
2 quick things. When we talked about the driving question, when you look at your template, the driving question is one of the first things that you fill out, but that does not mean you have to know it before you fill out anything else. I mean,
Yeah.
Some people start with the driving question. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and then I build everything up else around it. Other people get started filling it out, and then you go, oh, now I know what my driving question is.
Yeah, some people do it last, even, just by kind of pulling things together. So
the other thing was, and I think maybe I emailed you about this. It has everybody who wants Ashland graduate credit signed up. Is there anybody who has not? Okay, they, for some reason, now that they're online, all online registration, they close it by a deadline, and nobody ever knows that, including me. But if you change your mind, if you didn't sign up and you change your mind before the class is over, they'll reopen registration for me. I just need to let them know.
one more quick thing, when you do your exit ticket, one of us always responds to you. You don't need to resubmit that, you can keep communicating through that if you want to, if you have something else to say, but otherwise you don't need to resubmit after the initial time. If you submit your exit ticket and you don't hear anything from us within about 36 hours, because we're usually on it, then you should email and say, did you see it? Because I might have missed something. But basically the process is very simply, you submit it, we respond. And if you don't need to follow up from there, don't worry about it after
and
that.
there's probably something I can change on Google Classroom so it doesn't appear like you need to resubmit it, but I have not figured that out yet. So just, if you hear from us, you're good. And the other thing is on like exit ticket and other assignments, I may have a due date on it, just as kind of a reminder for you to fill it out. If you don't get it in on time and it says it's late, do not worry about that. We're not worried about it. You guys work hard, you're conscientious. I know when you see it's late, it probably bugs you, but we're not worried about it.
Everybody feeling like you're making progress and you're comfortable and we're keeping stress at a minimum? We good?
We love your project ideas.
Yes,
and they're
very much.
so varied. I mean, that's just a great example of you can almost pick anything and do a great service learning project around it. So
Have a good rest of the week and we will see you soon. Thanks, guys.
bye.
Thank you.